Right.
2023 come and gone. There are questions. Some concerning, some I think very positive, even if they are, necessarily eliminating people from this roster, which you never like to see. The big one, and I think that this is where I want to start, is the cornerback room. You add Joey Porter Jr., but then you come back and you add Cory Trice Jr., a guy who, Nick Martin described this guy as his film as has me levitating. That was the first thing I saw on Twitter of this guy. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but it's got to be good. Like levitating's got to be the pinnacle of film review status. So you add Cory Trice, you add Joey Porter Jr. Do you see, obviously Joey Porter Jr. is going to play a role. Do you see Cory Trice playing a role this season? Where do you see him fitting? Because I see a lot of people saying, oh, he could play the inside. I see some people saying he could play safety. He's 6'3", 210 pounds. In my opinion, you just put him anywhere. This guy should be able to cover anybody. But where do you see his role going?
Yeah, man. For the most part, Trice has played on the boundary in college for Purdue. He hasn't played a ton in the slot, but he's a guy that I think, I think people are getting the safety thing because he played a little bit there in high school, and he has that safety build. 6'3", 205, 206 pounds.
Yeah.
When you watch this dude like just walk onto the field, he looks like a safety. There's not very many corners that are built like that. And then when you kind of compound that with the 4.47 speed, the really good agility numbers that he ran at his pro day, just the type of athlete that he is, that's what was so random to me is like, man, the medicals have to be really bad because these type of athletes with this good of film, they just don't typically go on day 3 of the draft. The cornerback position, NFL teams are always looking for these type of athletes, these long guys who can get up and press coverage, reroute receivers, be physical, and Trice does that extremely well. So being a 7th round pick, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, but I had Trice in my top 100. Nick was higher on him than I was, but I think he was like 93rd on my top 100 list. So to get him at the end of the 7th round was just incredible value. And then when I watched this dude play, man, like I watched him match up with Rashad Bateman back in 2019, really had a lot of impressive reps against him, former 1st round draft pick. And then like last year, watched several of his games as well and was just incredibly impressed. Only allowed 1 touchdown in 2022. And that was really the case. That was really due to a miscommunication, in my opinion, not just like him just getting beat. So I think he's, a good athlete. He's got good film, very traitsy, very toolsy, perfect guy that, you give to Grady Brown and say like, hey, look, let's see what we can potentially make this guy into. And, if he does hit, and you talk about the possibility of maybe him and Joey Porter Jr. on the outside for years to come, like 2 just gargantuan cornerbacks who
giant
can play in press coverage. If that doesn't get you excited, I don't know. I guess you don't really have a pulse, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's like as good as it gets in any team, but especially in Pittsburgh. Like you talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, great cornerbacks of the Mel Blount. I guess Rod Woodson would have been a corner, but the Donnie Shells, the Ike Taylors, these guys were not the, oh man, we're going to come up with 40 interception corners. We're 6'2" and we'll punch you square in the face type of corners, which you got to love in Pittsburgh. So yeah, that is exciting. Do you see him as a guy who has an opportunity this season? I think that's the biggest question because you have James Pierre, you have Akello Witherspoon, you have Arthur Millette. I think people just want to know, like, what's the cornerback room going to look like when this all shakes out?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because it depends on like really Patrick Peterson's role. He's alluded to maybe being moved around a little bit. I think that Peterson might make a late career transition to safety. They might play him a little bit inside, give him some opportunities to not be as static as he's been, over the course of his career. But you've still got Levi Wallace. He's a starter last year. I think he's definitely going to have a chance to start again. Joey Porter Jr. being the 32nd pick in the draft. Draft capital does matter. Like NFL teams typically give those guys more opportunities. With Trice being a 7th round pick, he's not going to have anything handed to him, even if I think, he's certainly a starting capable type of talent down the road. So even if he doesn't play as a rookie, we talked about leading up to the draft, just the Steelers not having that developmental piece really for the future. And Trice, with his skill set and a guy to even mold for, even if it's not next year, if it's the year after,
Yeah.
you got Levi Wallace, who's going to be a free agent. Patrick Peterson's career is really winding down. James Pierre on a 1-year deal. So, like, there's going to be playing time available, even if it's in year two. But, to get on the field early, he's going to have to, have a good training camp, obviously have a good preseason, but also he's going to need to contribute on special teams, because that's what's really going to probably set a guy like him apart from, a James Pierre who's, got a lot of special teams experience. So he's going to need to do that, to get a helmet. But I'm optimistic about Trice, man. I thought the film was really good. He's a good athlete. There's upside there for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to, just like you said, have that building block that the Steelers did not have. I think that's what they wanted James Pierre to turn into. Obviously, didn't. The next name there is Akello Witherspoon. That's been your guy for 2 years, a guy that you think has plenty of potential. I agree. I think that, the Steelers didn't bring him in for nothing last year. I think he got a bad rep because of the injury and where he was tossed in at certain times. But do you look at him as, I mean, some people are just saying it's time to get rid of him. I think you have trade value in this guy still if you're ready to move on, because at the same time, like, if this is your fourth corner, if Akello Witherspoon's your fourth cornerback and you could afford him, I mean, that's as good as it gets, is to have that who matches what you're doing already with maybe a little bit more athleticism,
Mhm.
like a 6'2" corner who's real lengthy. Do you see him? Do you foresee him being traded? Do you foresee him in a competition for like a final spot with James Pierre, or you see him as, maybe we're building too much into this, looking too much into this?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with Akilla, man. It's just never been consistent with him. He's had flashes, you've
Yeah.
seen the highs, the way he finished the 2021 season. And then,
Yeah.
unfortunately, all of last year, he was really banged up. He had a pretty poor first couple weeks of the season. And then, against New England, it starts getting hurt and deals with the injury. And then they bring him back and they're having him play press man without safety help over the top on AJ Brown, which is
Dude, on
still just
AJ
a
Brown with half a hamstring.
yeah, a baffling coaching decision in my opinion. But I definitely think Witherspoon, he's a potential starter as well. Maybe not just on the Steelers anymore. And that's the thing. Like sometimes your time just runs out. But it'll really depend on like the type of preseason that he has too. Say
Yeah.
he comes out and just absolutely balls out. I do agree with you. He could work his way back into playing time. He could work his trade value up. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen. The cornerback room, adding two pieces like this with this much talent, it just makes the offseason and going to make training camp so much more interesting, because the Steelers last year, it felt like we kind of already knew who was going to make the team at that position, but this year I
Yeah.
feel like it's a lot more wide open. And I'm sure that these guys are really anxious to get after it too. I think it's going to make for an exciting couple of weeks in Latrobe.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, the more competition, the better, especially on defense, is always my opinion. But you were right. Last year, like, you knew it was going to be a Keller, you knew it was going to be Cam Sutton. You're just kind of like, oh, is Levi Wallace going to be enough to be that third guy? I think
And he
Levi
didn't
had a
even
great season.
practice. Remember, like he was
Oh yeah,
out
he
for
was
all of
hurt
training
or he
camp
was
last
sick
year.
the whole all of training camp. Yeah, you're very right. Yeah, so we didn't really get to see much. We were more focused on the wide receivers this year. It'll be the corners and
Yep.
the inside linebackers, those things.